beginning because we're like, he's just a jackass. Like no one wants to listen to what he has to say. But once we finally figured out, or someone was like, no, dude, he's just like, it's just holding us to a higher
Yeah.
standard.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that higher standard will get us more work. It will get us more opportunity, all this other stuff. Oh, okay. Well, why didn't he, does he need to be like, that's just his personality.
Just who's wired. Yeah.
And like he's just holding this incredibly high standard. So we lost the trust very early, but we brought it back because then we recognized like, oh, I understand where he's going and how he did a poor job of communicating that. He did a poor job of saying, hey, I'm going to hold you to the highest standard possible because that's how we're going to get the best work, the most amount of work, the things that we want to do will only happen if you have incredibly high standards.
Yeah.
Like he led with that.
Yeah.
He could have led that with that every single day. Like, those core values that I talk about, like 3 to 5 things that you like, we have the highest standards at the end, rather than just being a jackass or an asshole or whatever language you want to use or not use. And which is not HR compliant, I don't think, but we'll roll with it anyway.
It's an HR neutral moment.
Right. HR neutral, earmuffs. Yeah. So I think it's easy to earn trust early, but it's easy to lose trust if you don't stick to your guns and you don't communicate clearly on what you're actually doing. So I went down that rabbit hole, but what was your question?
So much a question. So, there are people that have, I love what you're saying about somebody having a high expectation, but there's a lack of a lack of articulating it, right? So instead of like sharing with somebody from where they're coming from, and it can actually impact group dynamics really easily, right? So if you have somebody who is constantly saying, this is what we're doing, this is what we're doing, this is doing, without the explanation of why, or why they're attaching the level of importance to something as a leader, exactly what you're talking about. Like you had to take that step back. He, didn't necessarily have the respect or the trust for him right away, but once the realization came around that, hey, listen, this is just an individual high standards. So take lesson. If you're that personality, if you are that type of communicator, make sure that you articulate why you're saying what you're saying when you say it. And there's nothing wrong. It's not a weakness thing. It's not anything. It's a clarity thing. Because, it's funny because all the clients that I've had, I've had the privilege, the raw privilege of actually consulting to over 600 small businesses, which is massive. And every time I've had somebody with that personality trait start coming at me and start charging me, it's like, well, why the hell would we do this? And this is stupid. And I don't understand why this employee is doing this. And when you come back with them with a direct response, here's why, this is what's going on, boom, 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 you're actually meeting them where they are. But they don't know to tell you, this is where I need you to be, right? And it happens more often than not. And then people who don't see that, or they may not necessarily be used to working in that kind of environment, see it differently. So going back to my manager that I was telling you about, he would be like that, but then he would shift. Like he had a personality quirk, and then all of a sudden he would, it was just a little bit of a drama queen, and he would start saying, well, I don't understand why we can't do this, and then he'd start breaking down and crying, and it's just, I'm like, dude, I'm the female between the two of us. Remember that? I know my alpha energy is like totally coming out right now. Will teases me about my masculine energy sometimes, but it was just like, at some point in time I had to put that hat on, and I just sit there and I'm like, can we get back to work, please? Because I don't know about you, but you've given me some deadlines. I need to get them done. Man up, man.
Right.
It's like, that's not good leadership. And if your employees see you acting like that, they're not going to care about you at all or what you say.
Yeah. So in high performing teams, in the SEAL teams, your reputation is everything.
Mm-hmm.
If you lose trust, that's going to follow you around forever. And so for me, once I lost trust in guys that were working for me, or they lost trust in me, it was mission number one to re-earn that trust. And that came with clear, concise communications, setting expectations, sticking to my word, having to do more work, more leadership, more proving that I'm in a leadership role. I had that trust, and then I lost it. because I became complacent. I stopped leading. And guys and girls in high performing environments, they pick up on that very, very quickly. And they're like, oh, if you're not going to lead, we're going to lead, and we're going to leave you behind.
Yep.
And so that was a very difficult thing for me to happen. I know lots of guys in the SEAL teams who have lost the trust of their team, and they earned it back. It is not impossible. It is very difficult to do. It's best to just maintain that trust and maintain those expectations, and always try to raise those expectations.
And I think
Raise your expectations of yourself and what people think of you.
yeah, and when you're trying to, like, if you feel like first off, if you feel like you've actually never thought about trust, there's a really great, Chinese proverb that's out there. And that is like, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. And the second best time is to actually do it today, which gives you the opportunity to go ahead and skill up your ability to build trust. And a lot of people are like, well, how do you do that? Well, I would say one of the first things that you need to do is that you really need to examine your integrity, and you have to lead by your integrity, which means that you keep to your commitments. There's no lip service, right? You demonstrate extreme honesty, and extreme honesty is very different than being open. And, honest is, that extreme honesty is like, look, companies, SEAL leadership, we don't always get it right, right? We make mistakes, and there's nothing wrong with saying, listen, we examined this and we realized that is not the right direction to go in. Here's where we're going to realign, versus being too open, which is, oh my gosh, God, man, we had such a crappy morning this morning. I'm driving on the way in, I had a flat tire. My kid puked all over the dog in the back seat. I got a migraine headache, and I just found out that my husband's run off and had, an affair with somebody. That's like way too open. But a lot of people will use that to kind of try and justify not getting it right. And what happens is that people see through that. It's paper, absolutely paper thin. And it doesn't show the kind of intent that you want. You don't have straightforward motives at that. You're not looking for something that is based off of mutual benefit, because when you're doing that level of openness, is that you're failing to care for the people that you actually interact with.
Yeah, you said something really important right there. You talked about, you make a mistake. And most people try to hide it or ignore it or make it go away or something like that. The most important thing when you're talking about trust is owning that mistake.
Yeah.
You screwed it up, own it.